Today we're doing another species spotlight. Honestly, one of my favorite type of videos to do, and it seems to be a pretty good favorite of a lot of people. I really do love doing that. However, that being said, I'm actually kind of running low on a lot of different species. Either because I want them to get a little bit larger, because they just aren't really great, or I want to have a better variety of video to actually use for these specific types of, species spotlight, where I'm talking a lot more intensively about them than versus like the top 5 list videos that I've done before. So with that in mind, I actually had a chance to go and visit with my friend who has a lot more great species of snakes than I do. I have more, but they have a wider variety and they have a lot of really cool oddball stuff. And we spent a good 3 hours or so just filming and getting a bunch of really cool shots of several species of snakes that they have. So, with that out of the way, let's get into talking about one of the coolest species of pythons in the world, the white-lipped python. So, white-lipped pythons, well, obviously we're going to be jumping back and forth between me talking and then the really cool shots that we did with my friend's animals here. When we think about the white-lipped python, originally they are found on the island of Papua New Guinea. There's a big mountain range that stretches that island that basically splits West Papua, part of Indonesia, and then Papua New Guinea. So it's the island of New Guinea, West Papua, Papua New Guinea. Anyway, that might be inverted. But there's a big mountain range that runs through splitting the country, and there is a wide variety of species that are found on the island, and the white-lips are one of the most iconic. Now, when it comes to the white-lipped pythons, there's a lot of biologists and scientists that argue about how many different subspecies and species there are, anywhere between 5 and 6 throughout. But in the reptile hobby, we basically have 2 that we really work with. Those are the northerns and the southerns. They're sometimes called D'Albert's pythons, and the actual Latin name for them is also a little bit conflated and argued about. Some of them being Leo python, and then the other one, which I'm absolutely going to butcher. I'll put them both up. Really, really cool species of snake, that being said. So they obviously get their name for a pretty obvious reason, and that is that white coloration that goes across the bottom of their jaws. So there are these there's really contrasting stark snakes with that big black dark head with that solid white that almost kind of looks like a jawbone or something that goes across the bottom of their lips. They're really, really cool, but they have a lot of very similar characteristics and a lot of other very distinguishing characteristics that are pretty easy to discern when you actually look at them next to each other. So the northern one's obviously found in the northern part of the island, and it does stretch over that mountain range. It's a little bit more closer to the coast. Then they actually are also found on some of the islands that do surround Papua New Guinea, including the Bismarck Archipelago and a couple other places in Indonesia, as well as like Biak and places like that. They are the smaller of the 2 subspecies or species. I'm totally biffing on that right now. But they are still very cool. The females, obviously being the larger, with them being pythons, usually sit in somewhere between the 6 and 7 foot range. And if you look at their coloration, it's pretty distinguished, right? So again, there's that big black head with the white jaw, and then their coloration is more of like an olive to dark chocolatey brown, almost black color, to that really cool golden hue. And in some of them, it's almost completely golden, but still maintaining that black head. The southerns, on the other hand, are the larger on average, with females often reaching lengths of over 8 to 9 feet in length. Again, males being a little bit smaller. They are more unicolor. They don't have that kind of almost two-tone look, and again, sometimes almost solid gold for the northerns. They're more of a uniform grayish black, steel gunmetal gray to sometimes almost a purplish hue. And then that's about where their differences are. The similarities, well, I know I've already talked about it at length, with that jet black head, they both have it. They both have that very distinctive white, the white coloration on the bottom of the bottom of their jaws, as their namesake suggests. But they also both have very pure, very bright white underbellies. And then if you look at these, if you're surprised I haven't talked about it as of yet, the very, very bright, beautiful, jeweled iridescence color that goes across their scales. I've talked about this with a couple other species of snakes, specifically in the rainbow boa video, where a lot of species of birds and reptiles and other animals have this very distinct protein in their skin called an iridophore. Iridophores are the special protein that reacts with ultraviolet light, giving it that really nice beautiful pearlescent, like wet oil slick coloration, which is why sometimes they've been incorrectly labeled as like a rainbow python. There are other pythons like in the New World, the Mexican burrowing python, that also has that really, really nice iridescent sheen to them. They're really, really cool, and overall they have very similar behavioral characteristics. So if we're keeping them in the hobby, a lot of them are wild-caught animals, and so because of that, they do get this kind of bad reputation in the hobby as basically a chainsaw with a tail. And when we think about wild-caught animals, those are animals that have not been part of human interactions, that haven't been bred in captivity over multiple generations. They're a little bit more accustomed to it. I know we've talked about, and there are varying opinions about whether or not there's actually like a truly tame snake or not, but there is usually a very big difference between a wild-caught or a farm-hatched animal, and that's a whole other subject that we can talk about later, and then a captive-bred animal. So because of that, a lot of the white lips, both northerns and southerns, do come in wild-caught or farm-raised. They usually have a pretty bad parasite load, so they need to go into quarantine like every new acquisition, as well as being definitely treated and monitored for internal and external parasites. And there's a whole lot of different things that you can do. I usually suggest going to a vet and getting the different stuff from the vets, just in case you're, and also proper dosage of them, usually, if you can find a really good reptile vet. That being said, they are really cool. They are a kind of generalist when we think about where they're hunting. So in the wild and at captivity, they're both fairly crepuscular, meaning that they come out usually right before night or right at this night end. So at dawn and dusk, that's what that term means. So what that means with as far as reptiles go, and a lot of species of reptiles in general, they'll come out right at dusk, right before it gets dark, to get a little bit some of that sunshine, that ultraviolet light from the sun, and to get some residual warmth from surrounding rocks and things like that. And then they start hunting. These guys are fairly active night predators and foragers, where they're actively found in trees and underground hunting for a wide variety of prey items. As adults, both of them, they're usually eating a lot of birds and a lot of mammals, both in the ground, both in the trees and on the ground. In fact, the southern white lips, sometimes then parts of bandicoots, have been found in their stomachs as well. As younger ones, it seems like that they will somewhat favor a little bit different species of lizard and things, but as they get older, it's still a lot of birds and rodents. In captivity, they do pretty well on rodents, although there's this very interesting thing that does happen with them that they're also well known for, which I think is really funny, and that is the white-lipped python is very notorious for hacking up hairballs. And yeah, you heard me right. Just like a cat, they hack up hairballs every so often. It's not with every feeding. And as far as I'm aware, I couldn't find any documentation of it in the wild or even on the farms or the snake farms in West Papua or any of the other places that they come from. But it seems to be like there's something with the hair of the rats that we use in captivity that may not be able to be completely digested in them, and so they actually regurgitate a hairball, very similar to like an owl pellet or a cat, where they digest a whole lot and then it kind of concentrates. And then in one article that I read, the keeper described it as it would come out earlier than usual, completely non-reactive to them, and it like kind of halfway down its back, it kind of like arched up a little bit and then kind of like muscle conjurct, and then its head and neck shook really rapidly. The whole thing took about 5-10 seconds, and then it went back into its hide. But in that time where it shook its head, the little hairball was left, and so it looks really weird. And evidently they're not quite as gross as like a hairball, because there's not as much like stomach bile that comes up with them. But with that really gross part of the video, but I still think it's really interesting and kind of weird, out of the way, if we want to start talking about keeping these things in captivity, we have to remember that they get thrown into this kind of really generalist term, semi-arboreal, where it's really kind of wide varying and it's open to interpretation. But basically what that means is that, like I said before, they are found and forage in the trees and on the ground, so a little bit of height. So if we're going to get them as little hatchlings, obviously you're going to need larger and larger enclosures as they get older. You get them in, they do like to feel secure, so give them plenty of height, give them plenty of give them plenty of places to perch and to climb, give them lots of hides. They do like to feel very secure, which makes them kind of defensive attitude that they're very famous for. They're not really aggressive. There's not a whole lot of aggressive snakes. Although I will argue that a male a male retic in breeding season might be considered aggressive. But with that being said, so even if it's a little one and you have them in like a little arboreal, like Exoterra, make sure that you do give them heights around. I've seen a lot of people start to do like vertical hides where they'll either silicone it or use like magnetic plates and stuff to keep them raised up. So it's like a little perch in a tree, like a hollowed out tree where they can come up and get into. Or like cork tubes, those work really well. Give them plenty of humidity. You don't need to get them crazy, crazy hot. You know, the mid 80s, that kind of like Indo-Pacific range of a lot of the different snakes that are there. You know, mid to high 80s is really probably good for them. And I'll probably get a little flack for that, but that's how I've spoken to other people who actually keep them, how they keep them. So that's the information that I'm giving out as well. Really cool. Just give them plenty of clutter. They don't really like handling a whole lot, so they make a really nice display species. That being said, if you can work with, you know, if you work with these animals long enough, just like with most species, they end up being, sometimes they can be fairly handleable. And my friend who has these, I sometimes describe myself as like a Black Steve Irwin, where I'm the weirdo and I like to go out and I like to catch stuff and wrestle with alligators and stuff like that. She's more like a Dr. Doolittle, where almost all of her snakes come in wild caught. She's had a lot of experience working with that and systems in place of treating their parasite loads, getting them on feed really easily and really successfully. But almost all of her animals are super well handleable, including ones that I've been told that they can be really grumpy and stuff. They've brought out a couple of them to the different presentations we've done with Show Me Snakes, and it's always really great. We've never had any issues, and again, most of her animals are wild-caught adults, and so it's really great to be able to actually work with this amazing species with all of their animals. It's really great to actually have video and put hands on these really cool species of snakes. Hope again you enjoyed this video. I unfortunately didn't have it right in front of me, but hopefully you guys really enjoyed some of the shots I took of these really cool species of snakes, and you get to learn a little bit about the two different types, the northern and the southern wide lips. If you want to check out the playlist of all of the other species spotlights, it's here at the end. Helps my click-through rate, lets YouTube know that I exist and pushes my stuff. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know down in the comments below. I do keep note of all the suggestions that you give me. I do work through a lot of them, but as I said before, I don't have all these species of snake, and sometimes I get busy with all my other stuff. So please, if you have suggestions, comments, concerns, questions about merch or anything like that, I have all that down below in the links in the bottom of this description. Check out all my other social media stuff. Hope you're having a great day, and we'll check you next time.